Hello, welcome to the Sunday Skills Exchange for November. This month we're talking about artificial intelligence, right? And we have on the line from the Amputee Coalition, Olivia Keller. She's the public policy manager there, and she's been keeping up with the policy side of AI. We're so happy to have her here. We're gonna have like an open discussion about AI, and we'll start with her.
All right. So I wasn't sure of, knowledge base or what I was walking into. So obviously the people on this call are familiar with AI, but just for anyone that may be watching later who isn't aware or may not have that base knowledge, um, this is, the science of making machines smart is the best definition I've heard for it, and I love that definition. But we feed data into AI. It's learned, we don't really know how exactly, to make decisions off of the information. We feed it more and more data, and the theory is that it becomes a faster, smarter, better than its human developer. That's the theory behind it. Now, whether or not it actually works that way, is a different story. There's definitely been some very big pros, but also some very big cons, particularly for the disability community. And I think really the root of, I think, for the disability community and a lot of marginalized communities are that, can unbiased people create an unbiased AI?
Mm.
People look at this and already, are trusting it. And if the AI machine says, this is their correct answer, they're not researching beyond that. So people are very, very trusting of this information, and, it may not be accurate. So, some of that is part of the problem, but also just the data sets that are being fed into it. Like these were created by people with inherent biases, and some of them may not even recognize that bias when they're going into it. But any bias that you feed into this, that is what comes out on the other side in the output. And sometimes has a lot of really just kind of unintended consequences. Um, so looking kind of at a macro level, um, some of those are, it relies heavily on profiling. And, if you know anything about profiling with, police, this has not been a great thing. It has not been great for marginalized communities. It's not great for people with disabilities. There's actually documentary evidence that there is inherent bias in some facial recognition algorithms, so I can speak, just against people with disabilities who were judged untrustworthy, because their face didn't conform to the, thousands or millions of faces that this data set contained, that was fed into it. And, it can flag people with like Down syndrome and cleft palates or any types of those, conditions that would affect and cause facial differences. So it's kind of just like one of the examples of people didn't think about, in this data set, hey, we need to include faces of people with disabilities in here. So it recognizes that too. When we're looking at security at airports and things, AI may not recognize a piece of assistive technology because it's never seen it before. So it's marking this thing as a bomb when in actuality it's somebody's, battery charger for their power chair. So little things like that. So that was kind of, my focus for the conversation, and just some of the pros and cons, and tools that we're using that are really, really great, and they've allowed people with disabilities to have a lot more freedom and independence than previously. But these tools are still very much in development, and there are some frustrations with them and some complications. And so I'm going to shut up now and let somebody else talk. But those are kind of, my focuses for tonight and things that I'm excited to talk about.
Karen, call on you. What have you been able to? Well, first we'll welcome Rebecca on the call.
Hi, guys.
And Rebecca, you want to introduce yourself, and I'll go over what we talked about.
Sure, yeah. And first of all, I'm sorry I'm late. But I'm Rebecca Armenta, and I don't know what all am I supposed to share. I'm a bilateral transhumeral amputee, um, and I was in a car accident little over 2 years ago, and that's where I lost my arms at that point. So yeah. And I'm excited to hear about what we have shared tonight. I've started messing with a lot of the AI tools, but still figuring them out. And I think you were just saying, Olivia, that a lot of them are still a work in progress and so forth. So yeah, completely understand that. But I've just started using like Chat GBT and Copilot.
Well,
So
since we're on you, Rebecca, what have you used it for?
Very little right now, just some searching, mostly. I really want to start using it for document review. And I'm not sure which is the best one to use for that. But mostly just a lot of just searching topics and things like that so far.
All right. Olivia, on your research, have you found out which one is more, uh, is the better one to do searches? Is there a difference? I know one is based on a lot of knowledge that's kind of older, and then there's some that are more recent.
I mean, it's really kind of hard to say because they all, once they're kind of put online and open to the public, like they're searching on the same database as everyone else is, just they do it a lot faster. So all of them do have the inherent problem of they lie occasionally and nobody really knows why. Like they just make stuff up.
Mhm.
Um, and I don't know if it's a confusing, fact with fantasy. It can't tell the difference. Like it's just reading information. It doesn't really know how to necessarily translate that, especially with programs like Chat GPT. It's really kind of a fancier search engine, really.
Mm.
So this doesn't have the capacity to, think in the way that we think of some of these other things that do kind of learn. This is more, it's just spitting out what it finds on the internet as the best resource. So I don't know that there's any way to say one's better than the other. They've all done some really goofy things. Um, Google's just, threatened somebody when they asked it a question. They told it, you were a horrible person and I want you to die. They've all done things like this. Like one of the first AIs before Chat GPT was released, was on Twitter, and it ended up creating like a Twitter hate machine in like 15 minutes because it was just going off of comments and people's tweets and how they were interacting with each other. And so that's what it found on Twitter. And so it started, to express racist and xenophobic comments to people. So, it's like I said, it's kind of one of those input output. We do that with kids all the time when, you always heard the garbage in, garbage out when you're watching cartoons on TV, those kinds of things. But it really is like, it's just taking what you put it into it and spitting something back out based on that.
Yeah.
So Olivia, real quick, my background was in IT prior to my accident and now not working, but of course I've got a lot of knowledge and people that worked for me previously. I have heard though that the Google has the largest database, and I don't know if that's true or not. But I guess there could be some differences depending on what databases they're working off of as well, right?
hmm
I mean, I can understand that because Google does have like Google Scholar and, things that, Edge and stuff doesn't, but I don't know how reliably or consistent that is. I think it really kind of swaps, like one does something and then the other one figures out how to do it and then best them. So right now that might be the case. I don't think that, I think that's kind of a fairly recent-ish development. Google was kind of one of the later ones really to roll theirs out. So they got to learn from other people's mistakes and kind of work on improving from that.
Well,
Cannot,
and they've built a very large data center, right? I mean, and from what I've heard, it's miles long.
Yeah. And I think they've had quite a few agreements with different organizations too. So I might look to see who has agreed with the New York Times or with some of the more reputable places too. And I know personally, I use ChatGPT in my job search, and I will draft my cover letter and then ask it to edit it, keeping keywords and tone in mind. And it'll occasionally just completely make something up.
Ooh.
You know, it says that I've done XYZ and I've never done XYZ. So I think that sanity piece is really important. And a friend of mine who's an IT consultant had the same thing. He uses Anthropic quite a bit to kind of feed information in and help build strategic direction. But he always checks it with humans. So I think that's my biggest takeaway right now is make sure that you use your mind as you double check it. And don't assume it's better than you. You know, there's definitely times that what I've created is better for my purpose than necessarily what they've been able to do. But it also does make me think, especially if I say, please edit or make suggestions or make 2 versions. Those are some of the tools that have helped me kind of get a good review or good input without giving it over to them, if that makes sense.
And you're able to use ChatGPT for that?
Mm-hmm. And then there's a piece in Grammarly, and I can send everybody the links afterwards, but I can actually show you this too, if it's okay.
Yeah, I was gonna ask if you could show us that because I think a lot of people would want to know how to do a cover letter resume type
Yeah.
thing.
And it helps me go faster, which is honestly one of the biggest helps of all. So in Grammarly, this is a free tool, and you can actually paste text in it and it will tell you if it looks like it's AI generated. So I found that really helpful because sometimes it's found things that I've written to look like AI generation. So if I go into ChatGPT and I say, I've been using this for thank you note drafts, for example. And it's so cute. It says, I'm so glad you like it. Best of luck. It's a little disturbing, right? So the way I've used it is, please write, a thank you note for, and I'll say for a specific job or the.
I'll use one or the other, although typically I fall back more on either Google or Edge to like summarize things. So for example, like we had a recent rule that was finalized through CMS about coverage for K2 knees. And so it was very, very technical. So I put that in and let it summarize. And then, like you said, I go back through and make sure, I edit in that it's getting that information correct because it doesn't always do that. But yeah, Rebecca, I don't know if when you hopped on, but I was actually born as a double amputee at the shoulder. So I'm not exactly the world's fastest typist either. I've used speech dictation software before. I don't like it. I've discovered that even with my toes, I can still fight or type faster than I can with this when I'm having to like constantly go back and edit it.
Correct, yeah.
Absolutely. And so my point or my thought here is it actually made up that I had thoughtful questions to reflect deeply on my experiences. So it was very kind, but it made up extra things. But But honestly, this is quite straightforward. And the one other thing I wanted to share, and Olivia, I don't know if you have other pieces to add to this, but there's specific pieces within ChatGPT that are like code generators or image generators and things like that. So there's a lot of sub pieces within it that can be really helpful too.
And that's what I haven't played a lot with. You
Mhm.
know, I haven't worked a lot with these like sub applications or whatever in here, sub processes.
I
I
played
don't
with
know what they call them.
Canva and Dolly. They're calling them GPTs, but honestly, I've mainly used the basic ones, and you can go back and look at your job applications or a cover letter. You can go back to a thread so that you can get back to and kind of build on what you've done before. And this was another thing that helped immensely. I did a press release for Skills for Life, and it's very tough to find all the names of the places you want to release it to. And so I said, please tell me who I should send this release to, include information about how to submit it, like names and emails. And they generated tons of information for me.
Mm-hmm.
So those kinds of speeding up pieces have been really helpful. And Olivia, I think the danger here is that it's learning and taking every bit of information I put into it, right? Correct?
Okay.
So there's zero privacy. It's
right.
I mean, I wrote this.
That's actually one of the struggles that, you know, the Amputee Coalition, but also when I was at Disability Rights Florida, so the PNA network. So every state has a protection and advocacy organization. They are federally mandated nonprofits, basically, that provide free advocacy and legal services to anyone with a disability in that state. So if you ever do need advocacy or legal services, contact your state's PNA. I have to throw that plug in. But it was kind of this really hard decision on, do we allow our staff, a larger proportion of whom have disabilities than what is probably typical at most places, to use things like AI note takers. But we also have access to really private personal information with, you know, clients that we work with, and with the protection and advocacy network, they're basically kind of law firms. So, you know, everybody that logs into the system has access to those cases and that personal information. You know, so it's trying to get that balance of, how do we allow people with disabilities to have the accommodations that we need without invading the privacy of our clients. And that's been one of the, I think, the biggest challenges for a lot of businesses, particularly that provide accommodations for their staff.
Absolutely.
Is there you talked about dictate to type. How do we use it to type things? Because I have to type a lot of things sometimes.
So there are a lot of speech to text programs and apps. Your phone probably has one built in. I would have to look at it to see, but so to let you navigate just giving directions. So Drag and Dictate was the very, very first one that came out, and I don't even know, the 80s, 90s.
I had that one and I hated it, and
I
that's
did.
what sent me on a different path. Like I'm frustrated with this thing because it's hard to back up.
Yep.
So yeah.
Now there's a lot of free ones that are out there, and they work pretty decently. I mean, it's basically kind of like what we're using for closed captions right now. In the, if you have your captions turned on. So it is using, and it is learning your speech patterns, and, you know, with Zoom, you know, it's learning speech patterns and words from everybody using it. But for your phone, like, it learns your speech patterns and how you say certain words, so it adapts. So as you use it more, it slowly makes fewer and fewer errors. But the training is the really difficult, prolonged part of that, where, you know, it's not like you sit down in front of the computer and half an hour later, it gets everything accurate. No, it's learning, and it is a very slow, sometimes very frustrating process. The problem though with some of the ones that are built in, and I don't even know that some of the ones that aren't, they were still designed for people who have normal dexterity in their hands or have hands, unlike, a lot of us. And so it's assuming that, you can, if it messes up, you can just click on the text and go back and, edit one or two words. Whereas if you're using this program to send a text, or if I say, hey, I'm not going to say that right now because my phone will start talking. But if I tell that, voice to send a text for me, it'll start typing, but if I pause, it'll think I'm done and just be like, okay, and read it back to me and say, do you want to send? And it doesn't really give me an option to edit it. It's one of those, you have to accept either the typos that it made and go, you know what, this person knows me and they'll figure it out. Or you have to retype the message and restate it over and over again. One of the other frustrations with it is that you can use it to make calls. So you can say, call whoever. Sometimes it takes it 2 or 3 times to get the right person, but it won't let you hang up the phone if they don't answer, or when their voicemail picks up and you don't want to leave a voicemail. And if you do, you're kind of just stuck sitting there on the line until their voicemail connects you like a minute or so later, and you're just leaving, dead air, or, singing la 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 on their voicemail while you're waiting for this. So these devices, like I said, they're very handy. They do allow people to use them that hadn't before, but they still do have some very frustrating components to them. There have been some efforts, though, recently to address some of these things. So, all the big tech companies, Apple, Google, Microsoft, others, they've started several different accessibility projects. Right now they have a speech accessibility project that's ongoing. So this is meant to get AI to recognize more diverse speech patterns. So somebody that may have cerebral palsy and, they're really difficult to understand, and people with Down syndrome and other disorders that can impair their speech. And so they're getting them to record and basically teach the system as well. So it'll be more accurate and easier to use for, for example, the person with CP, if they have their hands contracted, they can't type. Well, speech dictation software doesn't understand them. So, they're relying on eye movement to type. And, if you ever saw anything with Stephen Hawking, that they gave him his questions ahead of time because it could take him half an hour to say like 3 sentences if he's trying to sit there and do it right then and there. So like I said, there are things that's making it possible. It's not necessarily making it easy yet, though.
I I wonder if you could talk about, let's talk about what is the future for us. For example, us with no hands. Do we get a robot and we get a George Jetson car and a little doggy Fido?
I mean, as funny as that sounds, I don't know that that is really that far off. Like Japan is actually already doing this for like personal care attendants in their country. So yeah, you do have a little robot there that, does a lot of things for you. So I don't think that's as unrealistic as it once was. I mean, think about it. We have smart homes. So I open my garage door, I can unlock and lock my front door, I can turn on my AC and my heater and my lights, all using my phone, telling my phone to do that. Now, that does create some security risks. Somebody could hack my house. But I live with IT. My husband works in IT, so I know, our stuff is probably about as secure as he can probably make it. We have robot vacuum cleaners. So, there are all these things. We actually have the place I live in, Florida. So I'm in Tallahassee, and I can never remember the name of the place. It's this Indian restaurant, and we all call it the robot restaurant because they have one of those little, it's basically like a Roomba with shelving.
Mhm.
And so it comes over and it drops off your like menus and your silverware and your plates, and they load it up in the kitchen and it comes over to your table, and like they have a person that walks with it. But in that unloads the trays and stuff, but the robot comes over and it's like, hi, here's your food. Okay, bye. And everybody loves to go see the robots. Which, is a kind of an assistive aid for someone that may have problems carrying the tray. Like, yeah, they can put it on the table, but if you have strain your back or something, that's kind of an accommodation. So, like I said, I don't think we're that far away from that.
Yeah.
And how far, I mean, like where are we at right now compared to that?
Um, I mean, people are saying that things that we thought were, 10, 20 years away are now probably 3 to 5 years away. So the pace at which this has been advancing, I mean, we've kind of been working with AI for a while, but it was kind of this slow trickle. And then I don't know if you've noticed, but in the past couple of years, like it's exploded. And that's when governments are going, wait, whoa, what's happening? And we need to put, policies and regulations around this. But nobody was really prepared for it to, I think, break out into public usage that widely like it did. So governments are having to catch up, and that could potentially impede some of the development, honestly, because when we're putting policies and regulations, we're putting processes in place for testing and assessments and diversity in data sets. So it will make it better, but it also will prolong development too. So it's kind of that trade-off, but people are kind of saying like 3 to 5 years for some of this stuff.
Um, I think one of the ideas or one of the risks in my mind is that a lot of jobs disappear. For example, I go and do my self-checkout, and I'm the employee that's not getting paid by a grocery store, and the thing can see if I still have something in my cart. There that just gets rid of one checker person. Um, and I think
And then not fully, right? Because that person's kind of standing there for when this thing screws up.
yeah,
So,
there's one there. There's one there, and there's about 6 check stands that they're running. But that reduces like maybe down to 1/6. So I guess the thing that we need to be aware of is how to avoid being one of those jobs that's eliminated.
Mhm.
And I think that the jobs that can't be eliminated are like cook. Uh,
I don't
well,
know,
who
maybe.
knows? Maybe further down the line, cook is out of the question because the robot could cook for us. But what kind of jobs should we be looking for that don't involve AI or can't lose your job to AI?
Or you join jobs that support AI, so IT and engineers and things like that, right? Because now you've got a whole bunch of technology and engineering out there that's got to be supported and or continually developed, right? Something's already out of date by the time it's
Yeah.
released. So
Um, One of the companies that was kind of implementing AI, it was like a packaging company or something. And so they had a robot arm that was packaging stuff. So the person that had previously been doing that job, they actually had then trained on using the robot arm. So he didn't lose his job. It kind of transitioned into something else where he was kind of robot maintenance and helping it learn. But it kind of shifted his job duties. So I think with creative solutions, there are ways to consider that, but I think there's a lot of aspects of employment where this is kind of scary for people with disabilities. We kind of touched on in the conversation earlier, but a lot of companies are using AI for filtering through resumes and job applications. So, if you're a person with a disability and you have a gap because you were in the hospital for something, it's just tossing you out. If you had to take some sort of test, for your application, if you were slower than other people, even if you got all the questions right, AI is potentially factoring that in, and you're kind of being demoted a little bit because you couldn't type as fast as someone else. So I think there's kind of the scary aspect of it on that front. If humans are not following up on, reviewing applications to see what may be being kicked out that shouldn't be. So I think that's one of the aspects, as well as, elimination of jobs. And I think there's a lot of people that are concerned about that, even, that aren't part of the disability community. I know for a lot of us, like for me, remote work has been awesome.
Yeah.
So I think for people with transportation problems that can work from home remotely in some sort of office job, but we are looking at now, you need a higher level of education for a lot of those jobs too. So again, it's one of those, yes, we're making professional jobs more accessible to disabled people. You don't always have to be the greeter at Walmart. That's awesome. But we then have to provide the pathway to education for that, so you can get that job to begin with. So, that, I think that's where we're at.
And Olivia, Amputee Coalition has some workforce resources now too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm really curious, Andy and Lee, what you were interested in, like what brought you here tonight?
I don't know really anything about AI, so I wanted to try to get some kind of information and get involved with trying to learn some new technology.
I love it.
In most of every state will have its own assistive technology board. So in Florida, it is the Florida Association for Assistive Technologies and Service, or Assistive Services and Technology. FAST is the acronym for it. But every state has that, and they have, oh my God, so many things in their loan closet, like things I'm looking at. I'm like, what does that even do? I don't know. But there's a lot of like high tech and low tech items there. And the loan closet lets you loan them out, right? And try them and see what will and won't work for you. So that might be a good place to kind of start if you're looking to kind of play around with things. And they can provide some guidance too. Like they do an assessment of, what are your needs? What are you trying to do? Here's these items that might work. Let's try it out and see how to make it work.
Sorry, Olivia, what was that called again?
For Florida, it's called the Florida Association of Assistive Services and Technology. Every state has its own corresponding agency.
Should we
It's
just search for like assistive services?
Yeah, assistive services and technology
Okay.
in your state, and it should pop up with, the state board. If I find a more, link that will link you to all of them, then I will send that around.
Sure. Great. No
Olivia,
problem.
is the SIL another good way, the Centers for Independent Living, to kind of get to that group?
Some of them, but they're not consistent. So there's
Okay.
some that only have the loan closets for wheelchairs and shower chairs, and that's pretty much it. Some of the, better funded ones may have more items that they can loan out. A lot of them do have, computer classes and trainings on some of the programs and software, voice dictation and that kind of stuff. That you can try, but like I said, it's really hit or miss depending on the Center for Independent Living in your area.
Okay. I wanted to show Perplexity really quickly because I found that it's been a good way to learn things. So the question I had sort of pre-plugged into here is, what 5 articles or resources should I read to get a good introduction to AI for the general population? Please include free tools I can trust, talk about privacy issues, some of those kinds of things. So let's see what it tells us. It's often good at giving you resources and like a list or a way of things to learn. And this thing is called Perplexity, and it's free as well. So they have different articles to just kind of read through and try out. So you can kind of make your own mini course, if that makes sense.
Do you know who makes Perplexity?
I don't know. Should we ask them?
Yeah.
But and to kind of do your questions, to kind of give you like some ideas of some of the things that are out there. So we did talk about, speech to text programs, so you can talk, it'll type. There are some really cool things that, they're just cool to know about. So there's actually object and image recognition. So if you take a picture of something, it'll tell you what it is. Again, it's kind of a hit or miss, but a lot of people without disabilities will use these programs to identify plants and trees and that kind of stuff.
I
So
think
it's not. Hmm?
I think some of us are using them without knowing that's AI. Because I at work have this app, I Naturalist, and I take pictures of trees and it tells me what type of tree or birds and that's AI,
So
right? That's like a consumer friendly version of AI.
yeah, and one of my favorite actually explainer videos, I will have to look at and I will send it around. But it basically explains how you're training AI, and it's like you have to teach it to recognize the difference between B's and threes. And so what you just described is exactly what you're doing when you take that picture of you're feeding information into that database for it to compare to, does this look like this other tree, or does this look like a taxi in all of these colors that I've seen a taxi in before? So as more people upload pictures into this, then it's learning better to identify things. GPS apps are great. We all use them now, I think. AI note takers is something that a lot of people make use of. I kind of have a love-hate relationship with it, but it is handy. But again, privacy issues. Like if you're meeting with someone, you're an attorney or a
Yeah.
doctor, it's great to take those notes, but then you're running privacy issues. Telehealth, actually, which you don't think about necessarily as being anything to do with AI. But like you can take a picture of this rash or this mole and send it over to your doctor, and he's looking at it with AI and kind of, I mean, he's ultimately signing off on it, so the AI isn't diagnosing you. Although, people are concerned that we're going to get to that point and we're not ready yet. But it's because of AI that we're able to do those kinds of things. So that's made, healthcare more accessible in a lot of ways, but then there's some discriminatory aspects of it too.
It's a little scary.
Mhm.
Yeah, it is. Prostheses. So as they are coming out with hands that are more sophisticated and the fingers can move better, that is machine learning. So the machine is learning how to translate signals in people's brains into this hand and what the brain was trying to tell it to do. So it is using people's thoughts to move your index finger. But the problem with this, though, is that they're excluding people like me, where I never had the finger to move. So that pathway doesn't exist in my brain. And we're not doing research on, can my old brain be taught new tricks? Like, can it learn to move a finger it never had before? And so that's one of the areas where we need to kind of expand and study on, a wider variety of people and more diverse.
Yeah, there's a prosthetic where they have little nodes inside the socket and then basically it learns your movements because you retrain it every once in a while and it starts to know what you're trying to say to it with your flexing of the muscle. And this is AI. We didn't think about it like that, but it is AI. Let me
There's
see
a
if I can find that
wheelchair.
prosthetic.
There's a wheelchair called the Wheelie 7 that you can actually drive using facial expressions. So it can learn up to like 9 facial expressions, and you use those to drive the chair. And this is actually a device that, it can be connected to anyone's power chair apparently. And so they can use that. So it's cheaper than it probably would have been 10 years ago, but a lot of these things, and the big problem is they're still very much cost prohibitive. Like you can get a system where, you have a pair of glasses and you move your mouse around on the screen. But the more high tech you get, the more expensive you get too. And insurance often doesn't cover a lot of these things.
Yeah. There's a lot of AI in our cars too, when it tells us there's another car in the other lane and tries to change how our driving behavior is happening. And it's
Mine
interesting.
has rain sensitive windshield wipers and it was the best thing ever.
Mm.
So I drive with a joystick. So I have a DigiDrive if anybody's ever used that before. And so they weren't really sure how this feature was going to interact with the system I was using and if, once they got everything connected, if it was going to work. And so, you had to do your driving evaluation, even though I've been driving forever. So I still had to take the evaluator around just so he can say, he did his due diligence. So we were driving around and it just starts raining. And we're both kind of sitting there and I'm getting ready to push the button to turn on the windshield wipers. And suddenly they pop on and we were both just started laughing. Like, I was wondering if I was going to do that. But I used to have to play what I called the windshield wiper game with my car. So there's like a button that I hit to turn on the windshield wipers. But you have to like cycle through 3 times. So if you want low setting, it's 1. If you want it on 2, you have to go through again. If you want to bump it up to the highest, you have to do it again. And then you have to go through it again to turn them back off. And in Florida, like we'll have torrential downpours for like 2 minutes and then it'll just stop. So like I'm constantly turning windshield wipers on and off. So I'm like, yes, I don't have to do this anymore. My car just knows when it's raining.
That's awesome. Rebecca, what's been your experience? You said you've been using ChatGPT a bit.
Yeah, like I said, I predominantly just used it more as like a search engine. And I guess a search engine on steroids, so to speak. But I haven't used it too much. I just like within the last month started playing around with it. And like I said, I have Chat GPT, and then I also have Copilot
Cool.
that I've been using. But that was part of it is, in Chat GPT, there's so much you can do, right? There's so many different variations and functions that it has, that I'm just now starting to dabble in each one of them. Like I said, a big one for me is not so much even writing a document for me, but proofing it, proofing it for grammar, because I don't always have the best grammar, I'm sure. And so yeah, things like that is really where I was kind of looking to use it, at least initially.
So one of the things is really fun to play around on with Chat GPT, but don't expect it to be accurate like ever at all, is the image creator. It doesn't recognize disabled people. So if you try to tell it to, show a picture of somebody missing their arms, it doesn't know what to do with that. It has no idea.
Really?
So if you want to play around with that, it can be a lot of fun to see some of the things where you broke it. Like,
Yeah.
doesn't know what that is.
Shoot,
That seems like something that it should know. I mean, it's,
It goes back to
not
that data
that
set.
uncommon.
we should
Yeah, it's
we
crazy.
should try it, Karen,
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah, let's see it. Because the other thing that I want to use it for is some creativity type stuff. I like to work a lot with photography, and doing some editing in there and things like that, and creating things with photography specifically, or with pictures specifically. So that's another area I'm using it. There's Facetune is the app, and within Facetune it has an AI generator within it. And I do use that AI generator in the Facetune app for doing photo editing and things of that nature.
I've asked Canva to make a picture. It's notoriously not been great. So this should be interesting. I asked for an icon style image of someone who was born without arms driving a car.
Hmm. They all have arms.
The fourth one doesn't. I mean, they might have arms, but they're not on the steering wheel, at least.
Well, the second one is a dude. He is the car. The dude is.
Yeah.
That's kind of, well, the third, the bottom left, like, is that a clown car?
Yeah.
Yep.
It looks like an adult sitting in one of the little child Barbie Jeep things.
Yeah, it does.
Give it one more shot. It does. That's the other thing I found is you have to give them a lot of times to learn. As you said, Olivia, the training. I don't think they got much better.
No.
What if I
They just
said,
added some color.
Yeah. What do you want to see, Sam?
I want to see a timeline of ESFL for my website?
I probably have to give him the activities.
Oh, I'm just kidding. I was just kidding.
Let's see what it does though. It'll probably make some up. But if you give it the activities, it'll do it.
Oh, wow.
Isn't that cool?
I've seen Chat GPT do some funny pictures like a donkey riding a bicycle. It's pretty funny. My cousin likes to use Chat GPT to write pictures of his thoughts, and they're pretty crazy. But it does a pretty accurate job of doing it. And I think one of the dangers is we're looking at art and we don't know if it's AI generated or human generated.
Yeah.
Isn't that true?
I believe that having it be AI to me lessens the value of the art piece.
Well, I mean, we're just playing around, with the free versions now. Obviously, the ones that they charge for, they do a little bit better job, but those are the ones that are really scary because, they put your head on somebody else's body and
Mm-hmm.
doing something there. I know. So, I mean, things that can be like career ruining for people. And so, this kind of raises that privacy issue with social media. And, once you put your stuff out there, it's out there.
Yeah.
I think a lot of learning can be done just playing around, Andy. Just play around with it. I've had it
That's
write one of my scripts for one of my YouTube videos, and it was really good, but you just got to go over it. But it takes out the tediousness of the task. So if someone says, "Oh, can you send me a cover letter for because you're applying for a job," and you just have it write it and then read it and see if it's right. And that eliminates you having to type tack, 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 all
right.
those words.
Mhm. I do find that very helpful. So Lee was just asking how you guys have used AI in automating your house.
So I live with a techie, so I am very fortunate in that regard. So we have one of the home systems. So I have iPhone, so everything goes through that. So, we change out the locks on the door. There's like a little Ring camera there too. And but the locks can be used with the home app. And so I can tell my phone to lock my front door or unlock my front door. I can, talk to people through the video camera on the Ring camera. We have a lot of the lights set up for the lamps, so I can tell it to, we have a thing that we got when we were in New Mexico. It's a light that looks like a sun and it's hanging over our couch. So I get to tell it to turn on the sun, which is a lot of fun. It open and closes my garage door. I can adjust my thermostat with it. Some people have it set up where it will turn on your coffee maker. I don't have it connected to anything in my kitchen yet, but I can, get in and out of my house with it and turn on lights and that kind of stuff.
I think one thing to note, though, and correct me if I'm wrong, Olivia, is you have to have special kind of lights and you have to have special so that it can interact with it, correct? Like your
No, it's just like
normal.
an adapter that you plug into the wall.
Okay.
You plug the
So
plug
you
for the
don't have to
lamp
have a
in there.
special light, but you have to have the adapter.
Yeah, you
Okay.
have to have the adapter.
That makes sense.
The other, you can also get light bulbs with that
Yeah.
adapter built into it, which is pretty slick because otherwise you have to go find, you know, the light switch on the other side of the room. It's never on your side of the room.
Yeah.
And there's a ton of that stuff on sale for Black Friday. So Lee, maybe I'll ask our group to kind of do some searching of what they've used and ask people, and then we could post some of that too, because it's pretty inexpensive now. I think I found one for 4 light bulbs that was under $20, which is, and they're LEDs, so they should last quite a while. And one of the things I found that was really cool is there's a sensor you can put on your garage door that you can time it to shut at a certain time. If you're one of the, I think cities have their own vibes, right? Some cities you leave the garage door open, some cities you don't. My city was a leave it open, and we would leave it open and it'd be like 11 p.m. So this thing would shut it at 8 if we forgot.
My brother has something like that in his garage in Colorado after we came back from San Diego. I had seen him, his garage door light started flashing, and he went over and put his foot underneath the door, and then it stopped. And I was like, oh, I wonder why he did that. Well, when I was in Colorado, he was at work, his wife was at work, it was snowing out, and I went out with the shovel. He had a big, so I stuck my arm up underneath the handle of the shovel, and I would shovel the snow and kick my foot up to get the snow off the driveway, so he didn't have to do when he came home. And all of a sudden, his garage door starts closing, and I'm like, "Oh crap! I gotta run up there and put my foot in there so it doesn't close because the front door was locked, everything was locked. There was no way for me to get back in the house. I didn't have my cell phone with me. I was like, oh boy, that would have been
You should
That would have been a
crazy.
long day outside in the snowstorm.
Yep,
So you were
exactly.
here for that big snowstorm we got?
Yeah, the three in Castle Rock.
You
We
were in
ended up with,
Castle Rock?
we
I was
ended up
gonna
getting like
say,
close to 3 feet of snow.
Yeah, yep. I graduated. I went to high school in Castle Rock and
Okay.
graduated there. So I'm like 40 minutes from Castle Rock, but we got maybe not 3 feet, but probably a good 2 feet.
Right.
Right, that's abnormal for Colorado in November.
Yeah.
Maybe March, but
I was just like, oh, that's crazy.
yeah,
I
We
was
that was
went
gonna
from
crazy.
having a hurricane that we were watching in the Gulf to now it was like 40 degrees last night. I'm like, how? How do we go from hurricane to winter?
Yeah.
The weather has been bizarre everywhere, for sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
I was gonna say you could do an Indiana Jones video with that garage door, and
Slide right
slide right
underneath it.
under just in time.
It was icy enough. I probably could have.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Lee says I'm pretty up to date with home automation gadgets, Ring video, doorbell. Oh, there you are, Lee.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
One of the
Hi,
one
Lee.
of the things I wanted to mention that was kind of fun is I have a wheelchair that's um, sort of programmable. So there's an app on your phone that at least you can steer it back and forth across the hallway or whatever. So a fun thing I thought of for Halloween was to leave that thing outside with a skeleton costume in it and just drive it up and down the driveway when the kids
Oh,
arrived at the front door.
That's great. That's great.
I almost need one of those for next Halloween.
Yeah.
There you go.
Hope to see you guys at the next ESFL meeting. I haven't been before.
We'll be there.
All right.
That'd
Yeah.
be wonderful to have you.
Yeah, I look forward to it.
Yeah.
I haven't been either, so that'll be my first.
Oh,
Yeah, it'll
good.
be my first too. So
Oh,
Here it
I went
comes.
to my,
It comes fast.
yep.
It's
It's
definitely
hard to
worth
believe
it.
it's been almost 3 years already.
Mhm.
Yep.
It's it's such an intimate experience. You know, you really get to know people and have lunch with them and all those kinds of things. And it's like nothing I've ever been to. So
You bond with a lot of people.
yeah,
Mm, it's great.
yeah, it's really special.
Yeah.
Well, that's our time, unless anyone has any pressing questions. But in the meantime, if you have any questions, just post on the Facebook page. And Olivia, are you in the group now?
Yes.
Okay, Olivia and Karen might be able to answer you, and any of the other people out there. I use Google Nest. That's the only thing that's
Mm,
and it keeps the temperature and it automatically cools it down and knows when I'm inside, everything.
yeah.
Scary. I'm just kidding.
Sam, I was wondering if you had recorded the swimming session from last month. I was away.
I did.
Excellent.
I believe that Sean posted it. And
It's in the newsletter.
if you watch it,
Okay, cool.
if you watch it and you have more questions, don't be shy to ask. Actually,
Okay.
I probably will have our social media. Try to have her post it, and then you can ask questions underneath. Because the guy that we asked is kind of like asking Michael Jordan to teach you how to
Yeah.
play basketball. He's just like, you just go out there and do it, and then that's it.
Yeah.
And
I just bought a new device. It's sort of a shorty swimsuit with a um, flotation device in it. So
oh, cool.
I haven't tried it yet, but I'm looking forward to trying it, and maybe I'll do a little video and upload it if it works. It automatically flips you on your back, and then you can swim away, so you don't no chance of drowning.
Awesome.
I saw a quadriplegic using it on a video. I thought, well, that's got to be the cat's meow.
Yeah. Yeah.
I grew up in Florida, so I think they taught me how to swim before I could walk. So
Yeah.
like I just
Awesome.
learned how to flip over in the water and
That's cool.
Maybe you can swim for our teams in San Diego next year.
Well, you don't want to do it again, do you, Sam?
I'm tired of swimming. No, just kidding.
That was tough.
That was far.
I
It was
I
a tough
believe it.
swim.
I
Yeah.
believe it. All I had to do was run. So
Yeah.
you guys definitely get the credit for that swim for sure.
Well, that's the first time. Well, I only been swimming for about 3.5 months, and in a swimming pool, doing a half mile plus 75 yards is a piece of cake. Getting out there in that current, um, and I was swimming on my back, so I didn't see where I was going, so I always went off course. And one time, my guide that was with me had to swim 25 yards out to get me. He said, "Hey, you're way off course," so I had to come back.
Bring you back.
And then I was just like, "Oh, this is tough. I don't have." And at least at the swimming pool, I can look up and see the I beam and know
Yeah.
I'm going straight. And I was just like, "Oh boy, this is harder than I anticipated." And first time being in a wetsuit and learning how to deal with that, and it was a challenge.
You did it though. You
Yeah, I
did it.
did it. And then also I went surfing in California. Hip hip
Yeah.
hooray!
Yeah, that's
Yep,
awesome.
that was fun.
All right. Congratulations to everybody. Thank you, Olivia. Thank you, Karen, for attending,
Yes.
giving us a little tips. We'll see you guys next month.
Hey, quick
Oh,
question.
actually, we're taking a break next month. I forgot. It's Christmas. Yeah, go ahead, Rebecca.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Sam. But is there a way to copy the comments out of the Zoom meeting like easily?
I
Yeah,
can.
go ahead.
they should, if it's Sean's, especially if you're recording, then it should be sent to her with the files
Yeah,
that
it has a file with the text, so I'll be able to post that out.
If you
Okay.
just click and hold on the comments that you want to copy, then a menu will come up and you can choose copy, and then you can paste it to notes or whatever you use for.
Yeah,
a note taker.
I want all of them and I don't want to have to go through and do that on all of them.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll put it
But
out.
thank you, Lee. I appreciate that.
I'll
Yeah.
put it out. We'll put it in the comment. I mean, in the description of the video.
Sounds good.
when it
Great.
comes out on YouTube.
Yep. Perfect. Thank you
right.
so much.
Yeah, you're
Thank
welcome.
you.
Bye,
Good
everybody.
night.
See
Nice
you all.
meeting you, Karen and Olivia. Thank
Likewise.
you.
See
Take
you.
care, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.